who will have more regular season wins? And I didn't do a ton of back work for this. I kind of wanted to be surprised by some of them and see what my initial gut reaction was. So let's pull up. Did you pull all these into one graphic, or are we going one by one?
Yes, all into one graphic.
All right, so let's throw the graphic up now on your screen, and let's talk through some of these, because I do think there's a couple interesting ones. I would say the one that stands out to me the most is the one that's clearly moved. No, the other Oklahoma USC's moved a bunch too. But I think Alabama Michigan's an easy choice for me, and I know you're not going to like this, but I think Alabama significantly ahead of where Michigan is this year. One team brings back their quarterback. One team brings back most of their, I'll call them offensive line depth. Whereas I think Michigan's going through a little bit more of an upheaval this year. What's your take on it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, when you look at Alabama, I know both teams are replacing head coaches, but Alabama returns Jalen Milroe.
That's the key.
You know, they have the stability at the quarterback position, where Michigan, they're getting a brand-new quarterback, whole brand-new offensive line. I think there's probably one guy that maybe had some starts. They lose both their receivers in Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson. Really the two guys that are coming back on offense that had the experience that were a big part of that national championship was Donovan Edwards, who had a great national championship game against Washington, and Colston Loveland, who I think could be in the category for top tight ends in the country. On the defensive side of the ball, they have a lot more pieces coming back, a lot of first-round talent, like a Will Johnson, a cornerback, Kenneth Grant, and Mason Graham. I really like the defensive line for Michigan. I think the defense is going to be their strong suit, where the offense is just going to try to find that rhythm. I don't know quite yet who's going to be the quarterback. I think it's Alex Orji is the favorite. So that game against Fresno State on August 31st is going to tell a lot, because because the next week you got Texas. I know it's going to be home, but Texas is another team that's kind of national championship or bust. So I would say, even though, I mean, both conferences are so tough, Jared, it's like every week you've got a heavyweight battle. I would say Alabama is probably the bet here. I
would agree. The number has moved that way. I mean, Alabama's got that tough game against Georgia. Outside of that, I mean, I know LSU on the road, Death Valley. I'm sure it's going to be at night, but I don't see how LSU is anywhere near where they were last year. And then, of course, that game at Tennessee, Rocky Top's always tough, but they I think they're better than Tennessee. I think Kalen DeBoer is really the reason why I'm very high on Alabama this year, and it's not any talent or who they're bringing back. I just think DeBoer is pound for pound the best coach in the country, and now he gets the number one, all these resources at his disposal. Yeah, that's another reason why, just looking at it, I think Sharon Moore is going to be a great head coach. What he did for Michigan last year. DeBoer's ahead of Sharon Moore.
Yeah, when Harbaugh was suspended, but Kalen DeBoer has won at every place that he has been at. I mean, he made Fresno State one of the top teams in the Mountain West. He took a Washington team, what was in 2021 was awful. 2 years later, they're playing for a national championship. He got Michael Penix, that offense, to be just one of the scariest offensive units in the country. I think Alabama made the best hire that they possibly could with Kalen DeBoer. I know it's going to be a little bit challenging for him on the recruiting trail. I think we had Charlie Potter on last week on the Lombardi Line, who writes for Bama Online. Kalen DeBoer hasn't really recruited in the South, so that's going to be kind of the big thing for him. But other than that, dude's a winner.
Yeah, that's not an issue for me. I don't care what part of the country you're recruiting in. Can you coach? The recruiting with these SEC schools, it's not recruiting like it used to be. It's a business now. It's a business. Alabama has money. They're going to spend it. The other one that stood out to me here, and I'll bring this up because I'll give Zachary Cohen some credit. He's the only one that has the cajones to stand up in front of the Missouri behemoth, because every single person I talked to in the last couple of weeks is very high on Missouri. And I understand why. I think you've got the best receiver in the country in Luther Burden. You've got Brady Cook, who's a very experienced quarterback. You have a lot coming back. But the loss of the defensive coordinator is paramount, and I give Zachary credit for, again, standing in front of the very popular opinion that Missouri is going to be very good this year and go with an under on the Tigers. Well, if Missouri stays under their win total, I mean, how is Clemson not an immediate bet to have more wins than Missouri? Because let's just tailor the tape here. Clemson's got a pretty good quarterback, too. Kay Klobuchar, I know he's very unproven, but he's still a very talented quarterback. Obviously, Dabo and his recruiting tactics are not as modernized as some of the other teams with the transfers and et cetera, et cetera. but they play in a significantly easier conference. And my guess is they will have a significantly easier time navigating the conference than Missouri will in the SEC. So I think that's an interesting one because when you look at Clemson's schedule, obviously they open with Georgia, so probably going to lose that game. But who are they dogs to the rest of the season?
What do you think about the Florida State game? Florida State loses, obviously. Jordan
They're on the road.
Travis.
They're probably a dog at Florida State, but not a significant dog. I think maybe a field goal plus 3.5, 4.5. But again, it could change. It's early in the year. But let's just say they lose both of those games. Let's say Clemson goes 10-2. I would say decent chance Missouri goes 9-3. Mm-hmm. And what are the odds that Missouri goes 11-1 to beat Clemson's record, which is what would be required to win this bet? There's a lot of scenarios here where you would push this.
Eli Drinkowitz is getting Coach of the Year if that's the case.
Like, you're obviously starting 4-0. I'll give you that. Then you go to A&M, who we just talked about, with Mike Elko, and who Zachary Cohen's very high on. I agree. I'm high on them, too. Then you go to Bama. You're a dog there. You go to South Carolina. That game might be a little bit tighter than you expect. At Mississippi State, probably you're a favorite in that game. You're probably a favorite against Oklahoma at home. I would say you're a dog twice this year. You're a dog at Bama. You're a dog at A&M. I don't know about out South Carolina. I'm off the top of my head. I don't know how good their rating is coming into the year. But I think both teams are a dog this year twice. Mm-hmm. So would you rather take your coin flips in the ACC or the SEC?
Oh, ACC. And I think one thing that I noticed, big theme in college football this year, Jared, is conference realignment.
Yes.
Who did the SEC get? Texas and Oklahoma, two powerhouse blue bloods. Who did the ACC get? Cal and Stanford. Cal and Stanford haven't really been, at the peak the last, handful of years. And Missouri has to play Oklahoma. Granted, it's a home game, still a tough one. Where Clemson, they'll have to play Stanford. Who would you rather take in that game? I'm going to take Clemson over Stanford.
I agree. I think 100%. If it's a coin flip market, both teams are dogs twice, Clemson and Missouri. Mm-hmm. And it's still a coin flip bet. I think it was minus 115 towards Clemson, so a little bit more than a coin flip. But you still get the ACC schedule compared to the SEC schedule. And I'm not saying Missouri is not going to be favored in a lot of their games, but that doesn't mean they're going to win all those games. And on average, the SEC talent is ahead of the ACC talent. I don't think there's any debate there. So I'm not surprised that you are seeing just a hair of love towards the Tigers here in this market. The other two, not really intrigued with Oregon, Georgia. I think both of those teams are going to be 11-win teams. I don't see a ton of scenarios where Georgia wins 12. I don't see a ton of scenarios where Oregon wins 12. I think the odds of that one pushing are probably pretty high, which is why it's priced minus 110 on both sides to me. Oklahoma, USC. I'm down on USC. Obviously, the market's down on USC. I'm kind of down on Oklahoma, though. I don't trust Brent Venables as a coach. I think they lost a ton on offense. They lost their quarterback.
Here's another thing I think to look at these markets, Jared, is what's the non-conference look like? Sometimes you get easy layups. How about USC's non-conference? They got to play LSU. They'll be here in Vegas. But then they got to play Notre Dame. I mean, those are two tough non-conference games. Their layup game in non-conference play is going to be Utah State, who's
not terrible,
but they just lost their head coach. So I don't know. They're going to have a little bit. I don't know how.
Well, as Mountain West teams go, they've been one of the more stable ones.
Home of Jordan Love, baby. Home of Jordan Love.
Amen to that. The rest of the USC schedule is manageable. I think UCLA's down. I think Nebraska's down. Washington's down. Rutgers, Maryland. Game against Penn State at home will be tough. There'll probably be a slight dog in that game. Maybe it's closer to a pick 'em. And then you get Notre Dame. I think the only bet I'm willing to make here is that Clemson one. I think I would bet Clemson minus 115 over Missouri because I think Clemson, based off of the conference they play in and maybe the public inflating the Missouri lines just a hair here as everyone, besides our guy Zach Cohen, seems to be high on the Tigers this year. Maybe Missouri's not as good as we all think.